Hello and welcome. You're watching our special show, Coronavirus Facts versus Myths. I'm Gargi Rawat. Let's take a look at the data first. In India, recorded 40,134 fresh COVID cases, 4% lower than the day before, and 422 deaths in the last 24 hours. The country's test positivity rate, that's the number of positive cases per 100, stands at 2.81%, much below the worrying mark of 5%. 5 months after the last wave started, daily infections in India seem to have plateaued at the moment around 40,000 daily mark. And for the past 5 days, roughly half the new cases have been coming from Kerala. Now, India is likely to see a rise in COVID infections, building into a new, though smaller virus wave that may peak in October. This, according to a mathematical model by researchers who accurately predicted the tapering off of the second wave. The country may see a worsening of its outbreak as soon as this month, in fact, end of August, with the next wave peaking in the best case scenario with less than 1 lakh infections a day. The next wave is likely to be far smaller than the second wave. Already the centre has warned that 10 states are seeing an upsurge in COVID cases or a rise in the positivity rate. Another point of worry is the R factor, which is a key number to watch out for, has also crossed 1.1. It has crossed 1. It's at 1.01, which is worrying. R factor is that the reproductive rate indicates the speed at which the COVID infection is spreading in the country. Well, to talk more about this, we're now joined by Dr. P.S. Narang, Associate Director, Pediatric, Max Healthcare, Dr. Padmanabha Shenoy, Rheumatologist and Immunologist, Kochi, and Dr. Chandrasekhar Tulsigiri will also be joining as Chief Intensivist, Fortis Hirandani Hospital. Thank you so much, doctors, for joining us. And first, you, Dr. Narang, what would you say about, these worrying numbers that are coming out, especially the R factor crossing 1, it's at 1.01.
Yeah, thank you, Gargi. You have already summarized the number of cases. What R0 does is actually from the actual case, how many cases can spread. If it goes below 1, then overall the incidence will go down. And we only way to bring it down for the unvaccinated person is to follow the COVID safety norms. And when you follow the COVID safety norms, simultaneously, if we keep on vaccinating others, then R0 will come down. And although R0 with the Delta wave is very worrying, because R0 with the Delta variant is quite high.
Right, Dr. Shenoy, the worrying situation also from Kerala, where cases are seen to be high. I know lots of explanations are given as to, no, this doesn't mean the Kerala model has not worked, and a lot of talk about infection rates in Kerala. But in the last few days, there've been over 20,000, and half the active cases are there.
Yeah, very true. Kerala, actually, in fact, India's R0 is completely dependent on Kerala's R0 now. Let us be very clear about it. If you look at the R0 of different states, Kerala is the only state which is growing currently, except other states we are growing very marginally. India's R0 is 1.01, means 1% increase week on week, which is very, very marginal. But if you look at Kerala's status, Kerala has now recording 28% increase. That is 1.28 is Kerala's R0 last week. This is opposed to when we compare to a couple of months back, it was 0.7. From that, it has steadily increased, and now it is 28% increase in case to. And also, it is partly because we are doing more tests now. Previously, Kerala used to test 1.1 lakh. Now, last week average has been 1.6 lakhs per day. Some days it has touched 2 lakhs. So, partly the increase in cases because of increase in number of tests. But what we should understand is, once the number of tests increase, what we expect is the number of TPR will go down. But Kerala's TPR also has increased. Now it is almost 6 times the national average. It is 12.3%. So the situation is worrying, and yesterday Kerala's genomic surveillance data came out from labs, which is showing that 90% or 95% of the cases is currently Delta variant. So all these things suggest that Kerala is going to see an upsurge of cases. Second question is, why it is seeing the upsurge when other parts of the country is showing a decline? In other parts of the country, when we look at the data, Sero survey has come out, which has very clearly shown that Sero prevalence, that is the person who have been affected in first wave and second wave, is very, very high. It is something around 70-75% in most of the states. In Kerala, it is 40-43%. So indicating majority of Kerala population is still susceptible. Is it a failure? I won't put it that way, because what we want to do is we have to delay the peak, we have to flatten the curve. In most of the states, what has happened is there is a rapid peaking of cases, when there will be suddenly a lot of 5,000, 10,000 cases happen in a district and it rapidly comes down. That what happens is the virus just runs through the community and lot of deaths happen. Why does that happen? Because a lot of people don't get any good medical care and there is lack of oxygen. So Kerala has never witnessed those kind of scenes, and what Kerala is doing is flattening the curve. But what is the problem? Because of this flattening of the curve, curbs are continuing. Controlled measures are happening. So it is hitting economy of Kerala in a very bad way.
That's absolutely right, and in fact from the Sero survey, many also are concluding that perhaps the numbers that we were getting from other states, given that Madhya Pradesh showed such a high rate that over 70% of the 79% of the population was infected, and UP over 70%, that perhaps the earlier numbers coming from there weren't correct. But doctor, also what's worrying is that now you're going to go into the festival season, and that brings its own risks.
Yeah, precisely. Last year, if you remember, couple of weeks back, what was happening was from June 11th, that is the time, Kerala has a strange rule. I don't know, many of the states have this alternate day opening of shops and weekend lockdowns. These weekend lockdowns are, what it causes is on Saturday, Sunday, the things are closed. So Friday, what happens? People just rush the market. Google mobility data and other lot of parameters very clearly show that during those days, there's overcrowding. So what happened during the there was a festival of Bakrid, couple of weeks back. During that Bakrid, 3 days relaxation was given on Sunday, Monday and Tuesday. So people just thronged the market, and you won't believe there was 170% was the crowd when compared to the baseline. So 1.7 times.
Right.
So there was a huge crowding which has resulted.
In fact, there's been a lot of criticism of Kerala government for even allowing that. Dr. Chandrasekhar, the situation in Maharashtra currently, we believe, that some measures are going to be announced, that they're going to actually be lifting some of the measures that have been in place, and that people who are vaccinated will be able to take the local trains. They'll be allowed into, malls, etc. So, Maharashtra really treating it like going, district by district, and according to the positivity rate, deciding on the measures to take.
Gargi, you have brought up a very valid point because given the situation before the first wave and second wave, every time the Maharashtra, Delhi number of cases, reported cases were very high before each wave have started, and this is a very valid point for the discussion before the third wave start rising up. Definitely Maharashtra had reported highest number of cases until now. If you consider 1.3 crore population in India got a positive, tested positive during this COVID-19 pandemic, the Maharashtra had reported 32 lakh people positively tested in this pandemic. Every one in four patients in India is from Maharashtra. And if you look into the population and affected population in Maharashtra itself, or globally, or in India, generally where the population is more and the density of population is more, where there the positively affected population, the people are more. If you look into the Maharashtra itself, the Maharashtra, it's urbanization area, it's a Mumbai area, Thane area, Nagpur area, and the Nasik and Pune area are most densely populated. And just mere data will not help us to look into the data, any information, but we have to look at cases per million population. If you look like that through the million population, cases per million population, then the highest number of cases were there in Goa also, Ladakh also, and Delhi also.
Right.
And then comes the Kerala, Pondicherry, and Maharashtra. But we have to be very careful that before every, whether it is first spike or a second spike, the cases were definitely more in Maharashtra and Delhi and Kerala.
Right. No, so clearly we have to keep watching these numbers very closely, and district by district, because also the economy suffers, so we can't have one blanket rule for the entire state or entire region. But yes, measures need to be put in place, and especially watch the numbers as they start rising, and the R0 number going over 1 and going to 1.01 is a matter of worry. Thank you so much, doctors, for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Well, let's now focus on the United States, and COVID cases are rising in all 50 US states as the Delta variant is spreading coast to coast, and with less than half the US population fully vaccinated, public health chiefs are warning of an extraordinary surge. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the US's top infectious disease expert, has warned that more pain and suffering is on the horizon in the US as COVID cases are climbing again, and officials are pleading with unvaccinated Americans to get their shots. Most new infections in the US continue to be among the unvaccinated. Well, to talk more about this, we're joined by Dr. Fahim Yunus, Chief of Infectious Diseases, University of Maryland. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us on the program again. Now, it doesn't seem that the US is going to have that summer of joy that President Biden had hoped for. In fact, cases are rising, with the highest number of cases being reported since January.
Right, but I think increasing cases may not be the best metric for us anymore, because what we need to be focusing on is the hospitalizations and deaths. And in US, we are largely seeing two different pandemics, one within the vaccinated and one within the unvaccinated. Typically, 97 to 98% of all hospitalizations in America right now are in the unvaccinated. In my state, Maryland, over 6 million people live here. And during the month of June, we did not have a single COVID death among the vaccinated people. So 99.2% of all the deaths are occurring in the unvaccinated people. So unfortunately, what we are seeing is not a bad disease, but bad choices.
And Doctor, tell us about businesses asking for proof of vaccination and announcement that federal employees are being asked to vaccinate or undergo regular testing. These measures are controversial, there aren't they, but much needed?
Of course, I mean, we cherish the individual freedoms in the American society, and our culture is not very open to ideas that force or push or mandate people in a certain direction. However, we have mandated seat belts in this country, and everybody wears a seat belt, whether you like it or not. We do not allow smoking in our buildings because we've found that to be a public health issue. And I think sooner or later, people will understand that this is not a political issue. This is a public health issue. It's going to start from healthcare industry, but I cannot imagine any industry that will be immune to it. Most colleges, universities are now going to mandate the vaccine. The banks will mandate the vaccine. Disney and Walmart have mandated the vaccine. And I think one thing that will speed it up, make it more palatable, is the formal FDA approval, which we believe will be coming in hopefully weeks and not months.
And what do we now know about the Delta variant? Because that is being seen as the cause of this surge in cases. The CDC, in fact, recently said it's as infectious as chickenpox.
I think that's sensationalism and dramatization. What we truly need to focus on, what's different. Yes, Delta variant is more contagious, no question about it. Delta variant in some studies has caused more hospitalizations, but it's not universal. And we still don't know whether it's more lethal, probably not. It's not causing more disease in children as some people would like to sensationalize. What can you do about it? I think that's the discussion. One, you should vaccinate. Once again, in a country like America, again, in the state of Missouri, there are more than 6 million people living there. They just had a vaccine clinic and no one showed up there, while estimates show that about 2 million people are still unvaccinated in Missouri. So to me, the discussion of focus on Delta variant is irrelevant when you have 2 million people who are willingly not doing something that is shown to protect against the variant. So I really think this whole focus on the variant is sort of unfounded. The focus should be on vaccination.
And what have the observations been in terms of the breakthrough infections? That's when people who've been fully vaccinated get the infection.
Sure. So the breakthrough of infection is likely going to be 100 in 100,000, something like that. But I think the way I look at that, once again, to me is irrelevant, because guess what? Most of us haven't had a cold or a flu in 2 years now. And if that's what Delta variant or COVID ends up becoming, that it gives me a cough and a cold for a week, once a year, I think we have won. I really don't look at those breakthrough infections as failures. I think to me, that's exactly how we are going to come out of this pandemic, where COVID will become irrelevant. It will be just another cough and cold that people will recover in a week. And that's what most of those breakthrough infections are. Once again, people can make the choice of whether that breakthrough infections ends up putting them in a ventilator or killing them, or them getting better in a week. That's what the vaccines can do for you.
And currently in the United States, are you, seeing that it's vaccinated people also who are spreading the disease, given that people are, mingling quite freely now, and there's been a lot of confusion about the mask mandate?
So I think it's an evolving area of science. We all know that vaccines will reduce transmission. It's just simply logical. You don't even have to look at a study. A vaccine is going to prevent disease, prevent hospitalization. Of course, it's going to reduce transmission. We just had CDC come out, this MMWR that has come out from Massachusetts, where in 4th of July celebrations, some people have given the evidence that perhaps they were carrying as much virus in their throat and respiratory secretions while vaccinated compared to unvaccinated. I think more research needs to be done there. It's a very unusual sort of situation where people came from different states, came for a festivity. I don't think that's how normal life is. So I would wait and hold my judgment, because I think that's an evolving area. For now, people should know that vaccines will reduce transmission, in my opinion, and what the current data is. One study is not going to simply destroy all the previous evidence. I understand Delta may be a new variant here, but we should still hold our judgment and let science play out a little bit more.
All right. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us on the program again. Thank you. Well, with that, time for us to slip into a short break. Coming up on the other side, we answer some of your frequently asked questions about COVID and about vaccines, and Dr. Chandra Shekhar will take those questions for you. Stay with us. Now for our campaign, Vaccinate India, in partnership with Google, where we discuss questions that all of you frequently look up about vaccines and about coronavirus. Joining us to answer those questions is Dr. Chandra Shekhar Ratulsi-Giri, Chief Intensivist, Fortis Hirandani Hospital. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us. And one of the questions that people often look up, especially since the vaccine drive is underway and everyone's getting vaccinated, is how long does it take to develop immunity after a COVID vaccine?
Gargi, if you look into the literatures and evidences available until now, yes, the Oxford University had published the data of immunity or the people developing antibody in response to the vaccination. They published on April 23rd the paper. They said that people with whoever have been vaccinated with a single dose, then beyond 4 weeks from the first vaccine, generally around 60 to 65% people have developed the antibody. And they have also published and they said that if you give a second dose 6 to 12 weeks from the first dose, and beyond 4 weeks from the second dose, the efficacy of the vaccine or the antibody titers, effective antibody titers developed in around 90% of the people, more than 90% of the people developed antibody 4 weeks from the second dose.
All right, so around a month, you're saying to play it safe after the second dose is when you do develop a certain amount of immunity. Also, how does one check this? People have started doing these tests to check their antibody levels and, how much it's going up or going down?
See, if you look into the immunity against COVID-19, there are actually, if you look into that, how the COVID virus is attacking the body is, we have two defense mechanisms. One is humoral immunity and second one is cell-mediated immunity. Humoral immunity, generally you can measure the titers of the antibody, that is the IgG antibodies or spike protein antibodies. But T cell mediated immunity is also there, and generally this titration checking and monitoring the antibodies is not required at this stage, because giving or testing for a COVID RT-PCR or a COVID test itself is a very hectic procedure going on around in this pandemic period. All labs are busy with testing for a COVID-19 test itself, and it's not required to monitor a titer in every given person or people. Generally high risk people, whoever they are prone for an infection or prone having a multiple comorbidities, or otherwise a healthcare worker, whoever on daily basis they are exposing themselves, they can titrate and monitor. But for that also there are no clear-cut guidelines, and there is no need to monitor or titrate at this stage until we get a further guidelines on this, international guidelines on this, and who all should undergo a titration or a monitoring of these antibody titers. Until that gets clear, we should not go for that, and we should not recommend it.
Yes, because it just adds stress to people's minds when they think that, the antibody levels are going down. Now, if we talk about vaccines, doctor, people are looking up how do mRNA vaccines work, because there's been talk of Moderna perhaps coming in. Of course, everybody talks about, Pfizer and Moderna as being the two best vaccines.
Yeah. If you look into any vaccine, how it works, that yes, generally most of the vaccines are taken in the upper quadrant of our arm, and these mRNA vaccines in the COVID-19 situation, these are intramuscular injections, and these viral spike proteins or the mRNA proteins are broken down by our immune system of the body. These viral particles, they get broken down. Once the antigen or the vaccine enters in, our immune system will sense that, and it will send a certain cells to protect the body itself, and these cells will present that antigen to our immune system, and these cells will break down that antigen or a viral protein into a protein pieces. And generally these protein pieces are spike proteins of the COVID-19 viruses, and against that our body or our cells will teach our bodies or T lymphocytes so how to respond to this antigen or this assault.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Chandrasekhar, for speaking to us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.